A commentary in the September 1931 edition of the Tokyo Asahi Shimbun, one of the country's largest national daily newspapers at the time, reads: Japanese forces retaliated swiftly in response to the heinous attack of Chinese forces, blowing up the tracks of the South Manchuria Railway and attacking Japanese garrison units. 4 days later, the September 23rd edition of the same newspaper carried an explanation of the incident titled a quick overview of the Manchurian incident. The lead to the article declared: the reason for this incident lies not simply in the single occurrence of the Chinese forces viciously destroying our railway in South Manchuria, but goes back to the repeated violations by the Chinese government and citizens concerning our rights and concessions pursuant to the conditions of our territorial lease agreement in Manchuria. Being bombarded with news reports solely in this vein, it is not difficult to understand why the Japanese people came to harbor hostility towards the Chinese and view the annexing of Manchuria by Japan's Guangdong army as perfectly justified. Already from that time, of course, the military controlled media reporting, heavy pressure would be brought to bear on anyone who dared resist such control. Had the media not turned its back on its original mission to report the truth, it would have aroused public opinion to oppose the war and prevent it from proceeding. Unfortunately, the media by and large became willing accomplices of the military, dashing off stories of military valor and heroism and generally glorifying war. When the information portrayed by the mass media is true, it can serve as a guide for the public. What are people to do, however, when the media collaborates with national political powers in hiding the truth? Journalists bear a truly heavy responsibility. The military was quick to seize upon the turmoil caused by several coup attempts, such as the May 15th incident in 1932 and February 26th incident in 1936, to steadily pave the way for a military dictatorship. The military had viewed Japan's withdrawal from the League of Nations in March 1933 as a liberation from the annoying clamor of international opinion. Having strengthened its control over Manchuria, which the Japanese now called Manchukuo, Japan finally plunged into an all out war with China, sparkled by what became known as the Marco Polo Bridge incident in July 1937. By August, the Japanese government had passed a cabinet resolution to draft a general outline for the national spiritual mobilization movement. Henceforth, the virtues of national unity, loyalty, and patriotism, and untiring perseverance were extolled, while such activities as worship at Shinto shrines, reading the imperial rescript on education at schools, memorial services for the war dead, and joyous send offs for soldiers going to the front became compulsory. The Soka Kyuiko Gakkai was formally established in a meeting held in the fall of 1937. Prior to that, the organization had been an informal association of like minded educators which had started under the leadership of Sunesaburo Makiguchi in 1930 as a forum for sharing his theories on value creating education. Regular meetings had been held, and the group had published its own journal, Shinkyo, which means New Education. According to an article titled "The Manifesto of the Soka Kyuku Gakkai" in the April 1936 issue of Shinkyo, the main objectives of the association were the pursuit of pedagogical research centering around the system of value creating education, the implementation of a wide and comprehensive educational reform for the benefit of the long term future of the nation, and the resulting creation of a framework for the advancement of a fundamental revolution in the domain of religious thought. The significance of the announcement of its new platform was the Soka Kyoku Gakkai, which had initially set out with the aim of educational reform, had now set to work in earnest on a revolution in the realm of religious thought, which serves as an underlying foundation for all other aspects of human life and endeavor. The formal inauguration ceremony of the Soka Kyoku Gakkai, the members of which were now solidly committed to the goal of religious reform, took place in a turbulent period in a Japanese society rife with religious persecution. In December 1935, the government had cracked down for a second time on the Omoto religious group, and in September 1936 it began an assault on the Hito no Michi Kyodan Way of Man organization, today known as the PL Kyodan, the Church of Perfect Liberty. In the midst of this atmosphere of religious repression, Sunesaburo Makiguchi and Josei Toda courageously stood up, fully prepared to take on all trials they might be made to bear. It was a dark era, and Japan was plunging along an even more perilous course. Developments such as the promulgation of the National Mobilization Law and the establishment of the Imperial Rule Assistance Association only served to deepen the country's commitment to war and unite the entire nation behind the war effort. In March 1941, as Japan's relations with the United States became more strained and a military clash looked imminent, a comprehensive revision of the Peace Preservation Law was implemented. Under Article 7 of the revised statute, groups or organizations dedicated to spreading heresy that either negates the kokutai or debases the sanctity of Shinto shrines or the dignity of the throne were now subject to persecution under the law. Negating the kokutai was essentially a matter concerning the spiritual realm of the individual. It was not necessarily manifested as a physical act. Hence, the law was saying that if the government deemed that someone's opinions rejected imperial authority and that that person had formed a group of supporters with similar opinions, he or she would be subject to persecution. What this meant in effect was that even the human spirit had been placed completely under state control. This was thought control in its most extreme form. The devilish nature of national authority now ran rampant in Japan. Against this backdrop, the Soka Kyoku Gakkai convened a special general meeting at the Kyoritsu Auditorium in Kanda, Tokyo in April 1941. In his address, Tsunesaburo Makiguchi declared, "Self denial is a lie. What is right is to seek happiness for both oneself and for all others." It was a clear repudiation of the prevailing mindset in wartime Japan of self abnegation for the public good. In October the previous year, 1940, the Soka Kyoku Gakkai had adopted a new platform for and guiding principles. The first item in that new platform was, "The Soka Kyoku Gakkai shall neither be a gathering devoted to selfish individualism based on a short sighted worldview that is heedless of the welfare of others, nor shall it be a gathering dedicated to a counterfeit holism based on a long sighted worldview that neglects the self. Instead, it shall take as its highest honor becoming a living testimony to a truly holistic way of life based on a correct and undistorted worldview." Here, short sighted worldview indicates an egocentric attitude in life utterly indifferent to the welfare of others or to the prosperity of the whole, where individuals care only about their own well being. A long sighted worldview refers to a way of life that places sole virtue on laying aside all personal desires and sacrificing oneself for the country, smothering personal identity and autonomy in the process. Makiguchi's remarks stood as a bitter condemnation of militarism, which devalued the life of the individual, glorifying death and inspiring people to go off to war. Instead, Makiguchi advocated as a guiding principle for the Soka Kyoku Gakkai a correct and undistorted worldview that seeks to create a truly peaceful and secure society for both oneself and others. This describes a way of life that aspires for a happiness that encompasses not only the self but others. The true holism of which he speaks also implies harmony between the individual and society, each individual developing a solid self identity through Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism while contributing to the creation of a more humane society and striving for the prosperity of all.